Physical connection is the foundation for opportunity. The opportunity to earn more money, the opportunity for education, the opportunity to be safe and healthy. This is Caribbean. She's a cocoa farmer, a mother, a grandmother. You can see the power, the grace, the wisdom in her eyes that makes her a true matriarch of her community. A small village called Bundi Mulinga in western Uganda. This is where she works hard to get her cocoa to market and kids to school. But during the rainy season, the kids don't always go to school. They miss a few days of school, and she doesn't always get to get her cocoa to market because of this river between her farm and the market. What broke my heart was when she told me not about those rainy mornings when it was really clear none of the kids can go to school, as unjust as that is. What broke my heart was when she told me about those cloudy mornings, those days when she would have to look up at the sky and think, oh, what if those clouds broke? Maybe the boys should go to school, keep the girls home today. If those clouds broke and this river would swell, at best it would mean the girls would get stranded on the other side of the river. At worst, it would mean they would get washed away. That's a heart-wrenching decision for any mother to have to make. The World Bank estimates that 1 billion people around the world, just like Caribbean, lack basic transportation access. That's access, safe, reliable access to places like markets, schools, government services, healthcare facilities, places to buy airtime or food. 1 billion people. Even this estimate doesn't do justice to the real scale of the problem. It's based on the Rural Access Index, which is how many people live within 2 kilometers of an all-weather road. But it doesn't account for how those people are getting to that all-weather road. The index goes by how the crow flies. But children don't fly to school, and pregnant women don't fly to clinics. They're traveling along paths that are unmaintained, steep, and slippery, and that end when they meet a river or a floodplain. So coming back to Bundi Mulinga, why wouldn't a place like that have a bridge, a simple bridge so kids can get to school and farmers can get to market? Well, the answer to that question is in this dustbin in Oklahoma. The answer isn't in this dustbin in Oklahoma. It's the data inequity that this dustbin represents. It has more pixels on Google Maps than the entire village of Bundi Mulinga. Even though most businesses, schools, hospitals, government services, markets are mapped nowadays, an entire community of people, not even a dot on the map. And that river that was preventing so many people from getting to important places in their lives, not even a blue line. In fact, it turns out that at least 60% of our rivers and waterways in Africa are not mapped. 60%. In Africa, we don't even know where our water is. What does that mean for the people living in rural areas who are suffering the most from climate change and, ironically, contributed the least to it? How could we possibly be building them the right infrastructure to ensure their safety and resilience if we don't even know where the floods are going to hit worst? When people aren't certain that they can access their destinations, cross a river, get to a road, then they farm less of their land, they lose out on opportunities for higher paying wage jobs, they keep their children home from school more often, particularly girls, and they suffer from inadequate healthcare. When we know where people live, where they want to go, how they're getting there, the barriers in their way, then we can build the most powerful, life-changing connections for them. Imagine what this simple bridge did for Caribbean, the people of Bundi Mulinga, and thousands of people around it. You can't tell from this photo that we were taking the picture at 6 in the morning and holding about 60 bodas and pedestrians on either side, and they were all honking and shouting at us to get out of the way. My name is Nivi Sharma. I'm the CEO of Bridges to Prosperity, an organization that built this bridge and more than 600 bridges all over the world. providing safe access to almost 3 million people. At Bridges to Prosperity, we have been building lots of bridges, but also studying deeply and thinking a lot with researchers, with scientists, with governments, what the power of a bridge is. And it turns out that a bridge isn't just a safe access and reliable access, isn't just a human right. It's not just a basic dignity, but it also, surprisingly, turns out to be one of the most catalytic paths to development. Do you remember the last time you had to throw tomatoes or vegetables out of your fridge and how that felt? Imagine a farmer who has to watch all her crops rot because she can't get them to market. A simple bridge can increase farmer profits by 75%, increase household income by 30%, a 30% bump to your household income. Safe, reliable rural access increases girls' attendance at school, not surprisingly, by 200%, vaccination rates by 45%. Simply put, there is undeniable and irrefutable proof that dollar for dollar investments in rural infrastructure have a higher rate of return than urban infrastructure. Rural bridges pay for themselves within 1 to 3 years. And rural access is one of those beautiful development interventions that is really impactful at a global, national, economic level, but also really consequential at a household level. That is a recipe for a great development intervention. So after building hundreds of bridges and realizing that there were hundreds of thousands more to build, we realized that by building one bridge at a time, we were just boiling the ocean. We needed to create an enabling environment to get thousands of bridges built. This means working with governments to change policies, standards, manuals. It means working with the private sector so they can safely and efficiently build good bridges that last 30 to 50 years in places that maybe they're not used to building. It means working with universities and vocational training centers to change the engineering curricula in some places, so we have the talent to get bridges built. But at the core of it, it means addressing the data inequity. That's why one of the things that we've committed to doing, beyond just building bridges, is building better data, building better maps, data about the size of the problem, data about the realistic travel paths that people are walking down, data maps about where the water is, and where the connections would be most impactful. And that's why we figured out that if we build this technology, we can do it really accurately and we can do it at scale. And that would have a big impact on the problem. And luckily, we've teamed up with some amazing scientists, talented, intelligent people who, like us, want to make sure that we enable the right connections for the right people at the right place. A group of scientists at the Better Planet Laboratory have used deep learning models to map all our waterways. All the waterways in Africa now can be mapped because of this technology. It's shocking how the comparison between what we used to map and where the water actually is. When we take this information and we use artificial intelligence to look at satellite images, we can also accurately now predict travel paths and travel times. We call this Fika map. Fika, for the non-Swahili speakers in the room, means to reach. It's what you text a loved one after a long journey, nimefika. Look at this community in northern Rwanda. At the bottom right there, you see health centers, and above that, secondary schools. We can accurately predict that people in this community in Rwanda would take more than 2 hours to get to those destinations. We can also accurately predict where the best place to build a bridge is, and if that bridge were built, we can cut that travel time by half. When we put all that together, we can map populations, destinations, barriers, and connections. And most importantly, we can map the impact that these connections can have. Fika Map allows us to plan and prioritize rural infrastructure better than anything we've used in the past. Beautiful, unbiased, unpolitical decisions about infrastructure investments. Our theme today is the art of connection. life-changing connections. Actually, when such a much better title of my talk than some of the others I've given, which have been the impact of sub-tertiary transportation infrastructure investments. When I think about powerful, life-changing connections, when I visit places like Bundi Mulinga, I can't help but think about the bridge that has changed my life the most, maybe yours too. The big, the beautiful, the magnificent, and as my husband constantly reminds me, the exorbitantly expensive Nairobi Expressway. The Kenyan government secured $560 million to build infrastructure. And I know this isn't the way the world works, but it might have asked itself, what would benefit the most number of Kenyan citizens? An urban highway for the rich or 10,000 bridges for serving 2 million people? It's undeniable that, and don't get me wrong, I love the Nairobi Expressway. It's an engineering marvel. The convenience it has brought to my life, your lives, is beautiful. But I'm here today to convince you that maybe it wasn't the most beautiful, the most unbiased, the most unpolitical decision. I'm here today to convince you that actually that expressway is the epitome of ill-informed infrastructure investments. And I know you don't like to hear this because, wait, raise your hand if you enjoyed Mombasa Road traffic. Yeah. And therein lies the problem. People living relatively comfortable lives are constantly making decisions that prioritize making our lives even more comfortable and convenient. Meanwhile, women like Caribbean all over the world are praying for rain so their crops can grow, but not so much rain that their children risk death on their way to school. Let's rethink our priorities. Let's challenge the status quo and demand maps and data that tell the stories of everyone, not just the privileged few. As I leave you today, I want to remind you of one simple truth, that safe, reliable, dignified access is not just a convenience, it is a human right. It is the foundation upon which opportunities are built, lives are transformed, and communities can thrive. We have the technology, we have the knowledge, and we have the evidence to solve the issue of rural isolation in our lifetimes. Safe, reliable access for everyone. But these connections don't happen by accident. In Africa, we spend $50 billion every year on infrastructure. But to ensure that that $50 billion is spent in the most impactful and inclusive way, we must ask for better data, good data. Good data means mapping the unmapped. Good data means seeing the unseen and hearing the unheard. If we want to change the world, we must constantly be asking ourselves, what data do we need to understand the world more clearly? Thank you.